We've just published a very important story on the News Minute from Karnataka, and the reporting of this was done by our bureau chief, Anisha. The story is about a Dalit woman and her 16-year-old long struggle to get a mob of upper caste men convicted in an atrocities case. We've put the story behind a login. It's not behind a paywall. All you have to do is put in your email address and you can access the story. And it took a long time for Anisha to put this together. So I'd urge all of you to make sure that you do log in and you read the story. So the case is from 2008, but Anisha has put together the timeline and she's also read the court orders and the documents to put it all together for you. I'm going to go across to Anisha now, who will tell us more about it. Of course, we'll not give it all away, but just to give you a sense of why this story is important. Anisha, I want to start with that very question. Why is this story important?
Two reasons. Um, this was an assault case which happened in 2008. And after almost, 16 years, I think, there was a conviction in that case. Now, this is important because convictions are very, very hard to get in atrocities cases. And if you look at the data from Karnataka last year, there were over 10,000 cases in different courts in the state. Now, during that year, in 2023, around 1,100 cases, the trials were completed in those cases. And the number of convictions for all those cases was just 25. That's a really, really tiny number, and it results in a conviction rate of around, say, 2.2%. The low conviction rate raises an important question. Now, are these cases all false, as a lot of people like to claim using the data? Or is there something else going on here? So that is an important question for me, and that's why I wanted to look at the order and see what exactly the trial court said when it acquitted the attackers initially, like 2 years after the assault. So, looking at the trial court's judgment, it's astounding. Just how much, just the manner in which the court rejected all of the evidence is simply astounding. So, when the High Court convicted the attackers last year, it said that the trial court. So I'm just going to quote out and say what the High Court said. There was a palpable misreading of evidence. So
That's
I
strong.
think, yeah, that is strong, and it said a lot of other things which our readers can go and find out. But let me just give you an example of one of the things that the trial court said when it rejected the evidence. So, two of the victims of the attack on that day, the trial court rejected their testimonies because they happened to be the sons of Lakshmamma, who is the complainant in the case and who is a woman who fought for 16 years, to get their attackers convicted. So just because they're related by blood, the trial court said no, they would naturally testify in her favor. And there was so much other evidence which the court simply disregarded.
But let's just set the context for those of our viewers who are not familiar with this. Tumkuru is about an hour's drive from Bangalore. It's about 70 kilometers, and it is a town, although it is a district. The victims were from Dalit families, and those who attacked them were influential families, and they also
Yeah.
come from dominant castes, Vokkaligas and Lingaites. Tell us how this was a factor in what transpired.
In August in 2008, a group of Lingaites and Vokkaligas went and attacked the Dalits of their village. There were both men and women in this, by the way, among the attackers.
How big was this group?
So the attackers themselves were a group of about 11 people, but there was a huge mob over there. And this group of people attacked everybody in sight, enough to cause unconsciousness, severe bleeding among the victims. There could be no mistaking the identity of the attackers. Remember, these are Dalit people living in a village. Most villages in Karnataka or elsewhere for that matter are organized on caste lines, right? And if Lakshmamma and her sons and her neighbors were attacked, remember that they were agricultural laborers mostly. These were the very people, these Lingaites and Vokkaligas who attacked them, these were the very people whose lands they were going to work. If Lakshmamma has worked in her attackers' lands, her parents have worked in, these people's parents' lands, right? So that is the context in which this has happened. One day in August, There was a man named Gopal Krishna who had hired two of the laborers from the colony to work on his land. Now, this man Gopal Krishna's cousin comes along, and for some reason picks a fight with his cousin, and during that time he assaults two of these men, the Dalit workers who were there. So they go and file a complaint against this man, and 2 hours later, this man, this cousin who was booked, uh, he turns up with a mob and attacks everybody in sight. Why? Because a Dalit person had dared to lodge a complaint against him.
Right. And that, I think, very, very aptly summarizes the power equation
Yeah.
between those who were attacked and those who attacked them. I want to wrap up this discussion with one, question that I want our viewers also to kind of think about. If it took them 16 years to get a conviction, despite there being so many witnesses, what were the legal loopholes that the attackers explored and exploited? And what did the High Court have to say about it?
This brings me back to why I wanted to do this story. Does an acquittal really mean that somebody's innocent? And if you read the entire judgment of the trial court, you'd just be mind boggled as to why the court disregarded all this evidence. Like, for example, during the testimony of one witness, the judge says his demeanor was not appropriate, and the judge has no explanation for what this demeanor is, and he says that because his demeanor is suspect or something, he is a created witness, completely disregarding the rest of this man's testimony that he was assaulted, that he was injured, and then there were also wound certificates, medical evidence. So, in cases of, like, say, targeted crimes, particularly for marginalized communities such as, like, say, Dalits or tribal people, or even hate crimes against, say, LGBTQ folks or against women, I think it's important for us as journalists to really look at least some of these cases, and see what the courts are saying, because if you only go by the verdict, then you'll think that these men are innocent, these men and women are innocent. But if you look at the judgment, then you'll know just how much the court has disregarded. And let me remind our viewers again that the High Court said that there was palpable misreading of evidence.
Yeah. I think we leave with that thought. I once again want to urge our viewers to go ahead and read this story. It's a very important one, and Anisha has done a deep dive into it. These are the kind of stories that you'll not find on other news outlets, because we are not driven by either TRPs or clicks. We are only motivated to make sure that we bring the ground voices of stories that matter, and we only rely on your support to do that. The link for the story is in the description below. And before I go, as I keep reminding you, please become a TNM and a News Laundry subscriber. If you already are, make sure that your friends, family, and colleagues also become one. Thank you.